Well, we welcome you to this very special edition of the Plate Meeting as we celebrate the life of Eric Cooper as we continue to do that here at Close Call Sports. And what a great guest we have in Mike Reilly, the longtime Major League Baseball veteran of over 4,500 games, including the postseason, and longtime crew chief of Eric Cooper. Mike, thanks for giving us a few minutes.
Well, Tim, it's a pleasure to be here. I wish I could be talking on a better time, but it is what it is, and so we're going to have to celebrate Eric as much as we hate to see him gone from us, but we're going to have to celebrate his life now.
June 17th, 1996, a special day in Milwaukee. It was the first Major League game for Eric Cooper. Do you remember any part of that day?
I just remember some little young baby-faced kid working his first game, and I was happy to be there because I think he was just a great young man, and obviously his future as an umpire was going to be very bright because he had an awful lot of talent.
And just on a side note, your last game in 2010, you worked third base. Working second base that day, Eric Cooper. How cool is that?
Absolutely. It's amazing how our careers were intertwined as much as they were, but he was always there for me, and I think I was always there for him when he needed a little guidance, and even after I retired, and he would call for some advice and maybe a little cheering up and a little kick in the fanny, but he had so much ability. I knew it was just a matter of time in his career that he was going to blossom into an outstanding Major League umpire. And he did that very, very quickly in his career.
It seemed like just about every year you two were crewmates. You know, umpiring, as you very well know, Mike, can be a frustrating endeavor for a lot of the umpires that partake in it. One of the things that in people that I talked to off the air was that they thought Eric Cooper was one of the best ball strike guys around. They thought, especially when Questek came in, they thought that he was a great situation handler, but he didn't get that first World Series till well into his career in 2014. When you heard that he got the World Series, you know, what were some of your thoughts?
Well, I mean, my first thought, I was so happy for him because I know how bad he wanted it. And you're exactly right. He was a great balls and strike umpire, and he worked as well behind home plate as anybody we had in the big leagues. And I was very disappointed that it took him so long to get that World Series. I think I was maybe as disappointed as he was. But I knew it was just a matter of time. I told him to be patient, and when the first one comes, then the next ones will come. But if it would have been up to me, Coop would have had the series much earlier than he did because, like I said, he was a great ball strike umpire, but he also was an umpire's umpire. So whenever there was an argument on the field, he'd be the first one in there to help you. I remember one situation we had in a Subway Series between the Yankees and the Mets where we had a runner interference call, which is a very unusual call. I happened to make it, and sure enough, Coop was right there next to me to get us out of a tough situation. And sometimes it takes multiple umpires in arguments to get the point across, and he was one of the guys, one of the umpires that would always be there when you needed him, and he would never back off from any situation, and he always had great poise in his arguments, and he was a guy I wanted on my crew every year.
And I mean, you worked with him seemingly just about every year, and we talk about crew dynamics. I'm guessing that wasn't an accident that he ended up on your crew when you were a crew chief for all those years. Was it the Notre Dame fandom? What was the thing that made you, I need Eric Cooper on this crew?
Well, to be honest with you, we were both big Notre Dame fans, so we had a lot of fun with that. But the main reason why I wanted him on my crew every year is because of the umpire he was, and I knew he would handle himself on the field and off the field. He was an umpire's umpire, and that's what I wanted in my crew, and that's what Coop gave me, and that's why I wanted him every year.
When you heard the news, can you just take us through some of the things, some of the positive things that you thought about, the memories that made you smile? I was still the wounds are still fresh here as we celebrate the life of Eric Cooper here on the Plate Meeting podcast. Can you just take us through some of your more positive, stories about Coop?
Yeah, it's kind of Jeff Kellogg was the first to call me Sunday morning and give me the news about Eric. And obviously, after the phone call, you just sit there in the chair and you're thinking and you're wondering why somebody so young would go. But then you think of the good times, and I think what I think of the good times and what I have 4 children and 3 boys, and they would hang around the locker room all the time, and they considered Coop to be like a brother. He was obviously younger than I was, and he was cooler than I was, and the kids, they just took to him. So I would think the one thing I think about Eric is when I think about my children and how good he was to my kids, and that's my fondest moment of him as a person, that he would be so good to my children, and my children, thought of him as an uncle, a brother, and he was extremely good to my kids, and that's the most important thing in the world to me is my family. And when someone becomes so close to you that he's considered part of your family also, and that's how we considered Eric.
Both born in Iowa. I know, Mike, you now live in Michigan, but talk about a little bit about that Iowa connection. We've obviously got, Tim McClellan and Eric Cooper hosted a radio show together, but the bond of the Iowa umpires, it's very similar to the bond of the Michigan umpires. Seems like that group was tight, and you were in the unique perspective of being both a Michigan guy and an Iowa guy, so to speak.
Yeah, I was very fortunate. I was born in Iowa, and so Coop and I had that in common. Obviously, we moved out here to Michigan when I was a young man, but we would always take pride in the fact that we were Midwest, and we had Midwest values, and it was another thing that we had in common was where we were born. So even though Coop was he was an Iowa State fan because he graduated from Iowa State and didn't care so much for Iowa, and I cared a little bit more for Iowa than I did Iowa State. So we would sit there and laugh, and when the football games where we'd be playing. So, our bond goes between states, I guess, between Iowa and Michigan.
The world is a little less today without Eric Cooper in it. And for those that were lucky enough to meet him, to know him, we are all better off. I'll give you the final word, Mike.
Well, and I appreciate that, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk about a guy that is so beloved by so many people. But it's hard to summarize it all in one sentence or one phrase or one paragraph when you know a man as long as you do, and you work with him, and you eat with him, you travel with him, and you respect him. It's hard to lose somebody like that, and like I said, the world is not quite as happy today as Eric was, because he was always a happy guy, and so he will be missed, and the game of baseball will go on just fine without him, like it does with all us umpires when we step aside, but I don't think the world will be as good without having Eric in it.
Thanks very much, Mike.
Okay, Tim, thanks much for you reaching out.
And that wraps up this edition of the Plate Meeting Podcast. Special thanks to our guest, longtime Major League Baseball umpire, Mike Reilly. And fans, as we leave you today, remember, say something nice to somebody, smile to them, give them a hug. as you may not get another chance. Be kind to each other.